Welcome to Suzanne's studio. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host. I am so excited and pleased to introduce my guest tonight, Peggy Sprague. Peggy worked at IBM for 30 years, and she was a really big wheel. She had a brilliant career in sales, marketing, contracts, and God knows, I'm sure, other things. But anyway, when Peggy retired, wait till you hear this, she had 3 million frequent flyer miles, and P.S., which she's taken all by this time. Well, you weren't that. Well, anyway, so Peggy, when Peggy retired, she started her own business, worked half-time, it was a consulting business, and then decided that she was going to give the other half of her time to the community, and that's what we're going to talk about. Peggy, I really am thrilled to have you on the show. So you first have to tell, you are an advocate. What is an advocate?
Well, I call myself an advocate because I help other people ensure that they can get what they deserve, things they're entitled to, and that someone's standing up for them. When I was still at IBM, I became a court-appointed advocate for a child who was in a foster home. And for 4 years, I made a very huge difference in his life. And I realized that I had such a fortunate life that I wanted to be able to give back to others and help them be the best that they could be. So I was a child advocate, and after that I started the Silicon Valley chapter of Stand Up for Kids, and we advocated for homeless youth. And I was executive director of that for 6 years. So what are you doing now? Well, one thing led to another. Yeah. When I was with Stand Up for Kids, I was personally mentoring 3 or 4 kids in 2012 when Obama announced his deferred action for childhood arrivals, executive order, which you've all heard a lot about in recent weeks. And I looked at 2 of the kids I was mentoring. They were 17 and 18. And I said to them, you know, here are the qualifications to apply for this deferred action, which would allow you to get a work permit, a driver's license, and a Social Security number. I think you might be eligible. Let's look and see if you really qualify. And we thought that they did qualify. So I went on Google and looked up immigration lawyers. And I picked one out of Google, and I called him. And I said, I'm Peggy Sprague. I'm the executive director of Stand Up for Kids. I work with homeless youth. I have 2 girls that are in their teens that were brought here as children, and that have lived here continuously since 2012, which is part of the requirement. And I'd like to sponsor them through the Deferred Action Program for childhood arrivals. And my question for you is, I've already convinced my board to pay the application fee of $465 for the girls. But my question for you is, do I need a lawyer to help them, or can we do this on our own? And he said to me, he said, you do not technically need a lawyer, but I strongly recommend that you have one, because if you go through the whole process, they're going to turn over a lot of information, and if some of it turns up something that's not necessarily in their favor, it could end up in the wrong hands. And secondly, if you go through the process and for some reason they don't qualify, you lose your $465. And then he said to me, tell me more about Stand Up for Kids, which I did. And he said, I will sponsor your kids pro bono. I will treat them just like all my other clients, bring them to see me. So we did that, and they both applied, and they both got approved by DACA. The first one was Maricela. Maricela was 17, and she was in her senior year of high school, and she had had to leave home the prior year because her older brother was starting to touch her inappropriately, and her parents couldn't control it. So she was living on a couch with a friend in Mountain View, a friend whose dad was there. They let Maricela spend her senior year on their couch, what we call couch surfing. And during that time, we applied for DACA. And then after before that, she had been working in a pizza parlor and having just odd hours. But once she got her DACA approval, she got a work permit, and she got a full-time job at the Burlington Coke factory. And so she could work full-time and go to school half-time, and started going to West Valley College to get her associate degree. So I was really happy for her. Excuse me. The second one was Sadie. Sadie had been working as a pharmacist assistant, but Sadie also was illegal and did not have her own Social Security number. Most of these kids could only work in fast food because fast food didn't check Social Security numbers. They didn't check to see that all their kids were legal. But eventually, where she was working in the pharmacy, they found out she was illegal, and they fired her. And so she lost her job for that, and then had to go to work some part-time work under the cover. And she got a work permit, was rehired by the pharmacy, and was able to move in an apartment with her. She's got a young daughter now and a boyfriend, and is doing very, very well and has a full-time job at the pharmacy. And I was so proud of these two young ladies.
Of course.
So
I want to ask you, I hate to ask this question, what is life like for the immigrant families?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working, for the last 15 years, I guess, since I retired, of working with a number of low-income families. Many of them are immigrants. They don't have to be. Life is very scary for them. The immigrant families, especially the undocumented ones, they work very hard. The mom and the dad may each have one or two full-time jobs, and they're trying to create a better life for their children. They want their children to grow up and be able to have an easier time than they had. I've been to many of their homes, and their homes are small and modest, but clean, almost always completely clean. They've always had to worry about the fact that they were undocumented, and so they're afraid of certain things. When I started advocating for them, initially one example was a family was being illegally evicted without proper notice after living in an apartment for 5 years. And the Law Foundation helped me, which I know all the resources to help people. And they said, these people can go to court because this eviction is illegal, and they will win the case. And the family said to me, no, we're not going to court. We don't want to go anywhere near court. We're too afraid, right? Even though the law's on our side. So they didn't go to court, right?
So where would they go?
They ended up borrowing money from relatives instead and moving into another apartment because it was too scary, the idea of going to court.
Yeah.
So we advocated them for a number of ways. I had families with domestic violence situations, and I would take them to professionals in domestic violence, and they would provide tremendous help for them. I had parents whose kids were behind in school and needed either a new independent learning plan or a revision. And in one case, the school principals, when I found out that a 10-year-old kid could not read English, I went to see the school principal. And she said, oh, that's very common with bilingual kids, right? They often have trouble reading English. And I said, that's not acceptable. I said, he's 10 years old. He's been in San Jose school since he was 5, and he needs to be evaluated. And they evaluated him and put a plan in place that helped him a lot.
So you have some good stories.
Oh, wonderful stories.
I thought you were going to tell a lot of bad stories.
No, I've loved working with these people. They are so appreciative.
And you're such a positive person. Well, to tell about that red card.
Okay, I'll get there in a minute. So after Stand Up for Kids, I finally burned myself out being executive director for a lot of years, and I needed a new opportunity. And I decided to go work with Sunday Friends, which is a nonprofit in San Jose. I was actually introduced to it by Raul Perales, who's a councilman in San Jose, who had been a volunteer for me in Stand Up for Kids before he was a councilman. And he said, Peggy, go to Sunday Friends, you'll love them. I went there, and I started doing volunteer work. They have a program every Sunday for 200 to 300 low-income family members that help the families improve and learn and earn things, which I'd love to tell you about, but that's another whole story. And I said, you've got a great program on Sundays, but who helps these families during the week? What happens when they have a legal issue, a medical issue, a mental health issue, an eviction issue, an issue of working with the schools, and they don't know how to do it? And because English is a second language, typically the immigrant parents speak almost only Spanish. They learn a little English, and the children are bilingual. but they can't navigate the resource network to know who to go for help. So I said, I would like to be your director of family advocacy, and I would like to work with families to connect them with resources that can help them through major family crises. So I started doing that, and they made me the director of advocacy, and I've loved every minute that I've worked with these families.
So tell about the red card.
Okay. So
I love that red card story.
Well, I'm getting there. So
Okay.
Everything changed in the beginning of 2017 because then the fear became much more real. Excuse me. That's when the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE people, started doing active raids on immigrant families.
What does ICE mean?
ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, okay? And it's known as ICE, and they work for Homeland Security. And since the beginning of 2017, they have been trying to locate any undocumented immigrants and get them deported. And they've significantly increased the number that are deported. The sad part here is that many of the undocumented immigrants, they were brought here as children, no fault of their own. They grew up in the United States from the time they were 5 years old or 2 years old or whatever. They may have married and have a family. Their kids may be U.S. citizens, but they don't have a path to citizenship. So when ICE comes and detains them and deports them to Mexico, it's breaking up families. And the children may be left here with no parents, or the mother and children may be left here without a father. And I'm talking about families where the father was a wage earner, paid taxes, paid Social Security, raised his family, lived in the neighborhood next to you and me. Kids went to our school with our kids, and all of a sudden they are deported. And this is something that, of course, has been in the news a lot lately. But a lot of community has come together in the San Jose area. I say San Jose because that's where our Sunday Friends services are located, but we'll help anybody. In San Jose, many services have come together to help these people. One of the first things that we needed to do was teach them that they had rights. Even if you're not a citizen of the United States and you live here illegally, you still have rights under the United States Constitution. You have the right to remain silent if questioned. You have the right to refuse entry into your house unless there's a properly signed warrant. You have the right to not sign anything that people tell you to sign, right, without the advice of a lawyer. And so one of the first things we did was start running Know Your Rights seminars for the undocumented immigrants who were here. And there was quite a coalition of local services that did that. We worked with a number of organizations like Sacred Heart and like Catholic Charities and like the Chamber of Commerce, et cetera. And we started teaching Know Your Rights seminars. And then we created, actually the red card, this is the red card, and it's known as the Know Your Rights red card. And it's a two-sided card, and we give it to our families. On one side, it is in Spanish, and it reasserts what their rights are if someone comes to their house and asks questions. That you can remain silent, that you do not have to answer questions, you do not have to sign anything, you have the right to a lawyer. On the other side of the card, it's in English, and we tell them, hand this card to the people outside. And in the English side, it says, I choose to exercise my Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent. I choose not to answer your questions. I choose not to let you into my house unless you have a properly signed warrant with my name and address on it. And if you don't, please leave. And we have trained now many people in their rights and how these cards are used.
But how many people know about that, Peggy?
Hundreds. I mean, everybody we can reach, because there's probably a consortium of, I would say, at least 50 or 60 different community groups, agencies, nonprofits that are helping teach, are helping, educate the immigrants on what they can do, letting them know how to react, et cetera. Now, there's also something that was put together this year. There's an organization in San Jose, or San Jose area, called PACT. It stands for People Acting for the Community Together. And it's a consortium of some 60 or 70 churches and synagogues and places of worship. And they got together and they said, we need a hotline for these families. So if someone comes to their house we need a number that they can dial. So they put together a program. And the program, we hand this out to our families, and it says, protect our community. And if ICE or the police come to your house and start asking questions, call this 800 number. And this number is manned 24/7 by volunteers from all the different churches and agencies. And if they call that number, the person that answers the phone will do two things. The first one is it will tell them what to do, guide them how to act, what to say, whether to open the door, etc. But secondly, we have trained, all these organizations working together have trained hundreds of volunteers during the last year to be what we call fast responders. I've been trained as a fast responder. So when the call goes to the dispatch for the 800 number, the dispatcher immediately texts the volunteers that live in the area where the raid is. And it basically says there's a raid here, and the volunteers that can go, their job is to appear on the scene and text back, I'm on my way. We like to get at least 5 volunteers to the site of the raid. Our job is not to interfere. Our job is to document the raid, because we know that ICE officials use a lot of illegal tactics in these raids. So if we have properly documented the raid and they've done anything that's not by the book, it's not a valid arrest. Okay, so our job is to document the raid, not to cause any disruption. If an officer says, please stand back, step back and say, I've stood back, but document, keep notes, take videos, take pictures, and have the proof. So this is now in operation, and will continue to be so.
So you have done so much in this. I didn't realize that you've done that much.
Well,
but that's why I wanted to have you here. No, it's such a wonderful thing, and Peggy, I have to tell the audience that you've had such a not just fascinating, but you've had such a fulfilling life, and now that you're retired, that you're really giving back to the community. Think of other people that could do it. I don't think many people could or would.
Well, I think a lot of people would like to, but they don't know how to. I've just got to say that there is a tremendous collaboration of different organizations in the San Jose area. And back at the end of 2016, when things started to get scary, Sam Liccardo, the mayor of San Jose, came back and he wrote a letter to all the residents, and he said, we've got your back. He said, we love you in this community. We're going to protect you. We're not going to work with ICE and making immigration arrests. We're going to keep you safe so that you can keep your contact with the neighborhood and the police, and we're here for you. And that was a really powerful letter, and he's kept his word on that. So I've been at meetings at City Hall and at the Civic Center and whatnot, and there are usually some of our councilmen there, et cetera, and they're working together with all the agencies.
Is that answering the question about, is there a network of resources?
Yes, there is a network of resources.
That's your...
Some of them are the nonprofits, right?
Yeah.
There's one called, there's PACT, which I mentioned, which is the people acting together for the community.
Yeah.
There's also Siren, which is Immigrant Rights and Education Network, and they teach classes in rights. They teach citizenship classes. They have clinics in how to apply for DACA. They have clinics in how to become a citizen.
Yeah.
They're just endless. We have resources from the legal community that are available to help us for free, and people can call them. And we've got all the agencies and government agencies and nonprofits that help with low-income families.
What about the rest of the country? How are they doing?
I can't say for certain. I get a lot of news. Some of these things actually started elsewhere. The hotline for the immediate responders was started not here, but I think it was started in, Boston and Portland or something like that. So there is a lot of communication around the country. We, of course, here have made a big point of being a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, which basically means that we do not want our police force working with ICE agents to enforce immigration law. And that has become a huge issue with Washington and across the country. And it's not totally resolved for sure, but at this point we are still maintaining that we're a sanctuary city here. So we we do everything we can to keep that status.
What do you think is the outcome of all of this?
I hope that it's a path to citizenship for the DACA people. More importantly, I hope it's immigration reform is fine with me. I mean, I agree with that too, because we shouldn't have, just people continuing to come in illegally if there's not some reason. But a process for that where, I mean, the DACA kids they're exemplary. They've been through school or they've been in the armed services. They've got a clean criminal record, right? They're absolutely assets to the community, and we want to be able to keep those people here.
What is DACA?
DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. That's what's had so much talk about recently from Washington, because it was implemented by an executive order by President Obama in 2012. And that's what I personally sponsored a couple of young ladies through. And they've been able to renew it every 2 years since then. But Trump has now said that it will end on March 5th. And Congress has said, we'll come up with something that you will sign. And there's a major debate going on. And right now, these kids are in limbo. There's 800,000 DACA-approved kids that have work permits, have driver's licenses, have Social Security numbers, that, according to the current administration, will not be able to renew those again, and no new applicants can come in. And you can read in the newspaper every day about the battles that are going on there.
Are you hopeful?
Very hopeful. Very hopeful.
Why?
Most of the country is very behind DACA. Most of our communities are totally supportive of our immigrant communities. In California, for example, if we lost the immigrant labor force, we'll have a major economic problem because of all the work that they do. They do a lot of low-level work that we don't have other people to do. And so, who's going to pick the crops? Who's going to do all that? And there's no answer to that. I believe that most of the country is behind helping our immigrants, and we just have to find a way to do it, because that's who we are. Give me you're tired, you're poor.
If someone wants to get in touch with you, because you have so much information, what about if we wouldn't give them your number, but we could give the number here? Would you want to speak to them? That just came to my mind.
Oh, I'm happy to speak to anybody anytime.
Okay.
Oh, I'm always happy to speak to anybody.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make that clear. I got to ask you this question. I get so touched by different things. I don't mean to, but how does it make you feel doing all this?
It's the most important thing I've ever done.
In your whole life?
Yeah, I've had a great life. I've worked like hell,
Yeah.
But I've also had people that helped me along the way. And when I needed to make a decision or needed help with something, I found people to help me. And when I had time so that I could do what I wanted to do, I said, what I really want to do is help other people along, right? I want to reach out that hand and take them and help them change their lives. So, example, when I'm an advocate for someone, I don't just say, here's the resource that can help you. I say, I will take you down, and we're going to have a meeting with this agency. And I'm going to make sure that the right questions are asked and that the answers are understood and that we have a clear action plan so you know what to do from there. And then I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm going to make you stand up for yourself, right? So I love doing that. That's what an advocate does.
Well, you're sure an important person.
Thank you.
And you're at the forum, too. All we do is talk about the forum.
Forum's a great place.
It is a great place with people like you. But it's such a great honor to have interviewed you and to know you and to play bridge with you. You're the bridge player of the world. We could do a show about bridge. But anyway, I do want to thank you so much, Peggy.
And this is my favorite T-shirt, if you can't read it.
Tell what it means.
I stand with dreamers. I absolutely stand with dreamers every bit of the way.
Tell. What does that mean?
Well, the dreamers are the young people that are applying for DACA.
Yeah.
And others that would like to apply.
Yeah.
And they want a chance to succeed in life here, and they deserve it.
So you're going to keep doing this forever?
Forever.
Forever. Well, you're one of the young people at the forum. We have to tell that.
But I'm not one of the young volunteers at Sunday Friends. I'm one of the older ones.
Older ones,
because we have volunteers of all ages.
Well, I interviewed Sunday Friends a long time ago.
I remember that.
Remember that? Yeah, yeah. So maybe next time you'll come back on the show and tell us some more.
Sure, anytime.
I'd love that.
Anytime.
I want to thank you so much. And I mean, I wish you and the planet, you know, for this to continue, to really help as many people as we can, and especially the immigrants.
I guess one thing I didn't mention, if there's more time, I don't know if there is or not.
Yeah, a couple of minutes.
Well, one of the things that we do with families now, because they're so afraid of what's happening, is we help them put together a family plan for what if the worst case happens. Oh. So the worst case is mom and dad don't come home someday because they've been detained by immigration. And we've talked to family services, and we've talked to you know, the Mexican consulate and all that. And they said the family really needs to put together a documented plan for what happens if they don't come home. Who do they want to take care of their kids? Where do the kids go to school? What's the information about the kids, et cetera? And when we talk to family services, they say, you know, if we inherit some immigrant kids because the parents have been taken away, our number one choice is to do what the parents want done, which could be they want to go to Aunt.
I got to stop. Now you have to come back and tell us the rest of that.
Okay.
And I want to thank my wonderful crew. And we've got one special person back, Jim Seawright. Yay. And of course, this is so important. I want to thank our viewers for watching. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.